Hello, students. So, in this session, let's have a look at biological neural networks and artificial neural networks. Okay. So, in last session, we have discussed about a brief introduction to neural networks, right? So, by the end of this session, you'll be able to get a clear-cut idea about biological neural networks and artificial neural networks. Okay, so let's get into the session. So, as we have already discussed before, artificial neural networks are inspired by the way a human brain works, right? So, now let's have a look at how a human brain works, like how the neurons in our brain works. Okay, so this is typical structure of a neuron. So what is a neuron? Neuron is nothing but a processing element, information processing element. That means, as we have already discussed in the last video, our brain consists of billions and trillions of neurons, right? And all these neurons are interconnected with each other, and information will get passed from one neuron to another neuron. So here this is a structure of a single neuron in our brain. Okay, so this is one neuron, and again this neuron will be connected to another neuron, and that neuron will be connected to another neuron. Like that, all the neurons are interconnected with each other in our brain. Okay, so this is just a structure of a single neuron in our brain. Okay. Uh, Biological neuron consists of four components. Those are dendrites, cell body or soma, axon, and synapse. So, these are the four components of a biological neuron. So, first, dendrites. So, here we are having branch like things, like, right? So, these are nothing but dendrites. Okay, so all these are dendrites. So, these dendrites functionality of dendrites, they receive input information, they receive input signals, or they receive information from one neuron to another neuron. So here this neuron will be connected with another neuron, right? So the information, like the output from this neuron, will passed on to the another neuron. So these dendrites only will receive information. Okay, so the functionality of dendrite is they receive input signals. So next we are having cell body or soma. So this is a cell body. So all the information that is received by a neuron will get processed. So in our brain, whatever the information that we receive, that will get processed in our brain. So all that processing will be done here only. Okay, so soma processes the information that is received by the dendrites. So after receiving the information, that information has to be converted to output, right? So here this tail like thing is called as axon, and this axon converts the processed information into the output. So after that, that output will be transferred to another neuron. So this neuron is connected to another neuron, right? So here for that connection we have synapse. So again here also we are having branch like things, right? So these are synapse. So synapse is nothing but just an electrochemical connection between one neuron and another neuron. So from this the information will get passed on to another neuron. Like for example, I will just give a small example. Okay, so what I'm doing now is I am giving a lecture for you guys. You're listening to my lecture, that means your brain is receiving my lecture. That means I am giving input for you guys, so your brain is receiving that input. So after receiving the input, your brain will get all the information that your brain receives will get processed. So after that, whenever I ask a question, okay, related to this session, if I ask you a question, your brain will give me the output, right? So this is just a natural phenomenon of how our brain works. Okay, so once again, I'm repeating. In a biological neuron, we are having four components: dendrites. Dendrites are nothing but they receive inputs, and after that, in cell body, the information will get processed. Then the axon transforms our processed information to output, and this output will be transferred to another neuron. And the connection here is with the help of synapse. Synapse is nothing but an electrochemical connection. So this is how processing happens in our brain. So if we implement this natural phenomena with machines, that we call it as artificial neural networks. Okay, so just like biological neural networks, how we are having neurons which are information processing elements, in ANN also the information processing elements are neurons only. Okay, so this is a typical structure of artificial neural networks. In ANN also we have neurons. Neurons are information processing elements. So as you can see, these blue circles are nothing but neurons, or you can even call it as nodes. Okay. So these blue circles are neurons. So here only information will get processed. So all the information will get processed in neurons. You have to remember that. Okay. So now coming to the architecture of ANN. So in ANN, basically here we have three layers: input layer, hidden layer, and output layer. So, so this is one single input layer, and this is one hidden layer, and this is one output layer. So in input layer, we are having three neurons. Three input neurons are there in the input layer. So this in hidden layer, we are having two neurons, and in output layer, we are having only one neuron. So all these neurons are interconnected with each other, just like in how in BNN all the neurons are interconnected with each other, right? So similarly in ANN also all the neurons are interconnected with each other. Like for example, the input neurons in the input layer will be connected to the neurons which are in another layer. Okay, so here in this particular example, the neurons in the input layer are connected to the neurons which are in hidden layer. Okay, so hidden layer neurons will be connected to the next layer neurons. So like that, all the neurons will be interconnected with each other. Okay, so then after the interconnection happens with the help of connection links only. These blue color lines are nothing but connection links. So okay, each and every connection link will be associated with a parameter called weight. So in this particular diagram, as you can see, W1, W2, W3, all these things are weights. Okay, remember weight is a very important parameter in neural networks. Okay, so each and every neuron connection will be associated with weights. Weight is a very important parameter in neural networks. So weight represents the strength of connection between one neuron and another neuron. So our final output will depend on these weights only. So that is why weights are very important parameter in an artificial neural network. Okay. So each and every connection link will be associated with a certain weight. So what will happen here is, so we will get input to the input layer. So input layer, the neurons in the input layer will receive the input, and then that input will be traveled to the another layers, and there all the information will get processed, and after that from the output layer we will get the final output. Okay, so this is how a typical ANN works. So input layer functionality is it will just receive information. Okay, information will be received from the input layer, and from that input layer, the information will get passed on to the next layers, which are nothing but hidden layers. So input layer and output layer will be only a single layer, whereas hidden layers can be more than one. Okay, remember, input layer and output layer, always there will be only single layers only. But coming to hidden layers, then there can be more than one. But in this particular example, I've considered only a single hidden layer with two hidden neurons. Okay, so input layer receives the information. No computations will be done in the input layer. Input layer functionality is it will just receive the information. That is it. So that information will be traveled to the next layers, which are hidden layers, and there the information will get processed. So after that, the processed information that will be converted into output, right? So, and the processed information will be converted into output, and from the output layer, we will get the final output. Okay, so this is how a typical neural network works, artificial neural network works. Okay, so now coming to the similarities between ANN and BNN. So biological neural networks and artificial neural networks. So in BNN, as you have already discussed, we are having four components in BNN. Those are dendrites, soma, axon, and synapse. So what is the functionality of dendrite? Dendrite receive input signals. So in ANN, input layer or inputs receives the input signals. So next, soma. So all the information will get processed in soma. So in ANN, all the nodes or neurons, in neurons only, information will get processed. You can even call it as node. And next, axon. Axon in BNN, it converts the processed information into output. So in ANN, we will get the output from the output layer or output neurons. Next, what is synapse in BNN? It is just an electrochemical connection between one neuron and another neuron. So in ANN, we are having connection links and weights. Okay. So BNN and synapse is similar to weights or connection links in ANN. So these are the similarities between ANN and BNN. So now coming to some of the few differences between artificial neural networks and biological neural networks. So actually, compared to artificial neural networks, biological neural networks are quite slow to process the information. Actually, biological neural networks are also very fast to process the information. Like the information in our brain process within fraction of seconds, right? It's quite fast. But compared to ANN, BNN is quite slow. Okay. And allocation for storage in biological neural networks is very easy, but whereas in ANN, storage allocation for new processes is strictly irreplaceable. Okay. And then in biological neural networks, the processes will happen in a parallel way. But whereas in artificial neural networks, as you can see in this diagram, all the process will happen in sequential mode only, but not in parallel mode. Whereas in biological neural networks, all the processing is done in parallel mode only. Okay. So, and then in biological neural networks, even if any information gets corrupted, that information can be retrieved. But that thing is highly impossible in artificial neural networks. If any information gets processed, I mean, corrupted in the memory, it cannot be retrieved. That is one of the disadvantage that we are having in artificial neural networks. Okay. But in biological neural networks, even if the data is corrupted, it can be retrieved. Okay. And another difference is in biological neural networks, there will not be any control unit to monitor the information that is being processed in the network. But in artificial neural network, we'll be having a control unit, and that control unit will be continuously, it will continuously monitor all the processes that are happening in the network. Okay, so these are some of the differences between artificial neural networks and biological neural networks. Okay, so let me just summarize what we have learned till now. We have seen biological neural networks working like a structure of a typical biological neuron and working of it, and then we have discussed about artificial neural networks structure and their working and the functionalities of each and every layer, and then we have discussed about similarities between ANN and BNN, and then differences between artificial neural networks and biological neural networks. Okay, so this is about BNN and ANN. I hope this session is clear. And in the next topic, let's have a look at different types of architectures. Okay, so thank you.